Welcome back, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled you're joining me today for this explainer. We're going to unpack a truly fascinating piece of source material that sits right at this incredible intersection of biology, philosophy, and cosmology. Our whole focus today is on a fundamental thought experiment about agency, consciousness, and, well, the very structure of reality itself. We're going to take a journey from the microscopic pathways of the human brain all the way out to the expansive architecture of the universe, and we'll be asking one very simple yet profoundly deep question along the way. So get comfortable, focus in, and let's get started.
Okay, let's dive into this. Can a stone say, "I decide"? It sounds almost like a trick question, right? On its face, it's completely absurd. A stone is just lifeless matter. It has no brain, no nervous system, literally zero internal mechanism for thought. But the source material asks us to push this logic even further down, right to the microscopic level. If a rock can't make a choice, what about a single solitary atom? Could an atom ever realistically claim ownership or agency over itself? Could a basic particle look at its trajectory and say, "Hey, I'm doing this on my own"? Well, to answer that, we actually need to step away from philosophy for a minute and look at the physical evidence of how decisions are actually made.
What does neuroscience say?
Right. So before we can figure out if a universe or even an atom can organize itself, we first have to look at what biological decision-making actually requires in the real world. We really have to strip away the magic and just look at the mechanics. The concept of agency, that capacity for choice, to exhibit free will, or to genuinely say, "I decide," is defined in our source material by its strict physical requirements. Agency isn't just some mystical spark floating around in the ether. It's the direct product of an incredibly complex infrastructure. We're talking about billions of interconnected neurons constantly firing, communicating, and crunching data. The source argues that without this massive structural complexity, the biological capacity for choice simply doesn't exist.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer absurdity of the contrast here. Think about it. A single neuron, totally on its own, possesses absolutely zero agency. A solitary brain cell can't say, "I want." It can't make a plan, it's really just a biological switch. But in contrast, it's only through the vast, integrated entirety of a massive, billion-neuron network that consciousness and complex decision-making finally emerge. The capacity for agency relies entirely on the immense, complex architecture of the whole system. One tiny piece all by itself, it's completely blind and incapable.
Section 2. The particle's impossible claim.
So, we're going to pivot from the human brain back down to the microscopic scale of basic physics. I want you to apply this concrete rule of neuroscience to a single fundamental atom. And I actually want to slow down here for a second, because this quote from a great commentator over a century ago perfectly captures the philosophical logic of our source material. Listen to this. If I had a brain like the sun and knowledge that encompasses like its light, maybe I would claim to own myself. But without this equipment, this claim is absurd. Just sit with that metaphor for a moment. The sun-like brain. It grounds the philosophy perfectly in the science we just talked about. A single particle is exactly like that single neuron. To claim that it governs itself, it would essentially need the processing power of a star and an awareness that stretches out like light. Without that physical equipment, claiming self-ownership is scientifically and logically absurd.
So, the crucial point is this: ownership requires capacity. You simply cannot logically claim to manage yourself, direct yourself, or organize yourself without the necessary structural equipment to back up that claim. If a single neuron can't even decide to raise your arm, a single atom definitely cannot decide to bond, move, or organize into incredibly complex structures all on its own authority. It just lacks the capacity. It lacks the network. It lacks that sunlight brain.
Section 3. The universe's logical dead end. Okay, so we've explored the absolute necessity of capacity at the micro level. Now we're going to guide our imagination through a massive shift in scale. We're taking this logic about a single, incapable atom and applying it to the macro-level expansion and organization of the entire cosmos. Let's walk through this progression logically, step by step. Step 1. Individual particles lack conscious capacity. As the text argues, just like that single neuron, an atom has no agency, no equipment, and zero capacity to organize itself. Step 2. The universe is built entirely of these incapable particles. Everything from the smallest pebble on the ground to the largest galaxy in space is made of these blind, unthinking building blocks. Which leads the source material directly to the conclusion in Step 3, attributing self-organization to a universe made entirely of incapable parts creates a massive philosophical paradox. I mean, how can a system organize itself with such grand precision if literally every single piece it's made of is completely blind? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the undeniable comparison it draws. On one side, we have the incapable particle. We know for a fact it requires massive, immense capacity, a sun-like brain, to claim any ownership over its actions. Yet on the flip side, we have the concept of a blind universe, a universe which is routinely claimed to have spontaneously self-organized its galaxies, its ecosystems, and its complex physics without any underlying conscious capacity whatsoever. The source material argues that claiming a blind universe can spontaneously organize itself is mathematically, scientifically, and logically just as absurd as a single solitary particle claiming it owns and directs itself.
I want to leave you with this final, lingering thought. Can a blind universe self-organize if its fundamental building blocks lack all capacity? We've seen how neuroscience demands incredibly complex networks for even a single human choice to be made. We've seen the sheer absurdity of an atom claiming agency without a sun-like brain to back it up. So, when we look up at the vast, highly ordered night sky, we really have to ask ourselves, are we looking at a giant logical paradox, or is there a capacity behind it all that we are just beginning to comprehend? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep exploring these ideas, and I'll see you next time as we dive into another fascinating topic.